Oh, jeez. All right, well, I am rolling up to Highland Park Tesla. It is 9:15. Now I'm going to be shutting the camera off in just a second because they don't allow filming inside. So, here we are. Yeah, buddy, a P90D. Hey guys, all right, so fantastic. When I dropped off my Model 3, Dennis, my service advisor, hey Dennis, I asked him, I said, hey, so when I was in here last time, I had mentioned that I'd love to borrow a performance Model S from you guys and test it. So he says, I think, hang on a second here, adjust my seat a little bit. He says, I think we have one. So he went and checked, and he said, well, close. We've got a P90D if you'd like that. So I said, haha, absolutely. So I had become very familiar with the Model S, specifically the 90D that they lent me before, which this is pretty much identical other than the performance side of it. So I'm excited to be able to use the car for a bit. They said that their windshield guy, unfortunately, isn't going to be in until tonight. So he will be doing my windshield beginning tonight. They're closed tomorrow, which is New Year's Day. And so then they will be they'll be back to it, finishing it up, calibrating the autopilot on Thursday. So I'll be picking up my car either Thursday or Friday, which means I get to use this P90D until then. So very, very excited, and can't wait to see what this car has in it. This is a 2016 P90D. It has insane mode. It does not have the upgrade to ludicrous mode. So it has insane mode, so it's not, I think it's rated at 691 horsepower. And so this car is, it is the hot car from several years ago. And also, it's got 44,000 miles on it, so it's lost a little bit of its edge, but it is still plenty powerful. And also, one other thing is, it's 27 degrees Fahrenheit right now. It was 24 Fahrenheit yesterday when I took the car home, so it's cold out. And in order to get the max performance out of the battery needs to be warm. Now, there is a heating mode to heat up the battery, and in fact, I have that mode running right now. However, it's still, it's cold out. The rubber on the tires are cold, the pavement's cold. It was also wet all day yesterday. At least it's drier out today. But so I'm not going to get the full acceleration out of this car that it is capable of. Nevertheless, it's still crazy fast. So I wanted to walk you guys through my take of this car. Now, what was it, several weeks ago, I had a 90D, which was very much the same as this car, but without the performance upgrade. So it was just a standard dual motor, 90 kilowatt hour car without the performance upgrade. But it was also a year older. It was 2015, and it had 53,000 miles on it, I believe. This has 44. So I'm already familiar with the Model S. I had driven them previous to this as well. So this is not a new experience being in this car, but there are quite a few differences between the 90D and this P90D that I have today, and so I wanted to walk you guys through those things. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome, and if you don't know me yet, my name is Matt Shoemaker. I currently own a 2018 Tesla Model 3. It is a long-range rear-wheel drive car with the premium options pack, which was the only way you could get the car at the time. I have a relatively early car in the low 9,300s VIN number, and my car has currently 67,000 miles on it. And so I'm very knowledgeable with the Model 3. I'm also knowledgeable on the way Tesla does things. When you're in a Tesla 5 hours a day like I am, you become very familiar with their methodology, the design language within the car. Even though the Model 3 and the Model S are very different cars, there's obviously similarities. When I'm in this car, I can feel the family resemblance, so to speak, between them. So first I'm going to walk you through some of the differences between the Model 3 and the Model S, and then I'll get into this car specifically. So the Model 3, first off, Model 3, for those that are very that are novices when it comes to Tesla and their products, the Model 3 is a more basic car. It is currently the most basic car that Tesla manufactures, and the Model S is their midline car. The Model X would be sort of akin to the Model S, stretched into an SUV form, although that's sort of a loose definition. The Model X is more advanced than the Model S in many ways, powered doors and that kind of thing. So this car was their flagship until the Model X came out, and now the Model 3 is their more basic car. Now, the primary differences I'm not going to walk you through technical differences between the Model S and the Model 3 as much, but more the difference as a user of the cars. And so first off, the Model 3 has far less technology. It has a floating screen that is in landscape, not portrait position. There's no gauge binnacle up front. The dashboard is just a flat plank, and that is done to declutter the interior visually as we move toward a more autonomous driving future. So this car has more bells and whistles. This car has powered door handles that as you approach the car with the key fob in your pocket, the handles present themselves. The Model 3 just has mechanical door handles. The Model 3 does not use a key fob. You can get a key fob for it, but primarily it is either a key card, or most often you will just have the Tesla app on your phone, and as you approach the Model 3, it will unlock, and then you use the manual door handles to open the doors. So those are some fundamental differences. The Model 3 is a smaller car. It is, this would be a full-size car. The Model 3 would be more of a mid-size car. And the Model 3 is quite a bit lighter. I believe it's right around 1,000 pounds lighter. I could be off on that. I'll have to look up the exact numbers there, but far smaller, far lighter, more sporting. And I think that's because the car is smaller and lighter. So when you get in a Model 3, it definitely has a sports car feel to it, sports sedan, more so than the Model S. The Model S has much more of a GT, Grand Tourer type of feel, and the Model 3 is a lot of fun on back roads. You can throw it into corners and that, and though it's not a light car, it's definitely not nearly as heavy as the Model S. And both cars have the battery pack under the floor, however. So even though this car is big, it is heavy, and you feel that heft when you're on the road, it still is very well composed. Now, my ultimate opinion of the differences between the Model 3 and the Model S, not the performance of this car versus the performance of the Model 3, but just the overall package as a whole, is that I would say the Model 3 feels like the Tesla design, the Tesla ethos distilled down to its essence. And what I mean by that is, I remember when the Model 3 first was being tested by journalists, and they made the statement that when people asked what's it like, and they said it drives like a Tesla, and that's a good thing. Those were the comments that most journalists were making back then. Well, it drives like a Tesla, and that's a good thing. Oh, it drives like a Tesla, and that's a good thing. And I thought, well, I've driven Model S, a couple of Model S before taking delivery of my Model 3, so I knew the way the Model S drove. Got in my Model 3, and I thought, yep, it drives like a Tesla. But the Model 3, again, it's smaller and lighter, and there are fewer features, but what Tesla has done with the Model 3 is they have taken everything that's good about the Model S, the essential good things. I mean, there's a few things that are missing. You cannot get a powered sunroof in a Model 3 like you can with the Model S and that. But they've essentially taken what's good about the Model S, or what's good about all things Tesla, and have distilled it down to the essence of what a Tesla is, and eliminated the fluff and produced the Model 3. So when I get in the Model S, this car is a more flamboyant expression of that Tesla mindset. Now, to a large extent, that's a very good thing. For those of you that have Model S and Model X cars, I hope you don't in any way feel offended when I make the statement that I actually prefer the Model 3. Now, that is not because I've owned the Model 3 for a long time, and if I had a Model S first, I would prefer it over the Model 3. So a lot of it's just preference, personal preference, but this car is excess. Yeah, it's very much excess, and not just the performance. I mean, the performance is amazing and all that, and that is great. That's addictive, admittedly, but everything is excessive. I really don't need electric door handles to present themselves to me that are going to cost me $1,000 to repair when they break, and they do break. I don't need a gauge binnacle in front of me and the screen to the right. Now, that being said, I do like it there. But I have very much gotten used to my Model 3 that is a more clean, more plain interior, which is strange to say because I am one that has historically always really enjoyed a stylized dash. And we have a BMW M240i convertible. It has a very stylized dash. We traded in a little Honda Civic Si, and that had a very, very stylized dash. I love that car just for the stylized steering wheel and dashboard. And that being said, though, it's almost like there's too many things going on here. Now, I know some of you are going to complain and say, well, I have my tablet mounted on the center console on my Model 3 with the Scan My Tesla app and all of that data to read, and that's true, but I turn that screen off much of the time while I'm driving because I don't want the distraction. I only turn it on when I'm specifically looking at and looking for data points. Otherwise, it's turned off. So now, that being said, would I be happy in a Model S? Absolutely, especially a Performance S. This thing is nuts. It is nuts. Now, again, it's cold out. The roads are wet and cold. The tires are cold. So this car will not perform in the 0 to 60 in the 3 point whatever second range that it's rated at. The fastest it's probably giving me is about 4 to 4.5 seconds right now. I mean, it is pulling pretty hard, but the tires are slipping, and just the battery pack, I have to run heating constantly. In fact, I've had the battery pack heating for some time, and it still says heating estimated 1+ hour to get the battery pack at temperature. When I first got in the car this morning, it was 24 degrees Fahrenheit out. It's currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit. When I got in the car and floored it, it barely accelerated. I mean, it was really weak. So the battery pack is still currently cold, and yet it's pretty crazy, especially from a dead stop. Now, what are some of the downsides to this car from a performance standpoint? Well, one of the things that I found, and I've heard automotive journalists make this statement about the Model S, and it's accurate but inaccurate at the same time, and that is the statement that the Model S performance is a one-trick pony. And there is a large amount of truth to that. And what I mean by that is, this car, yesterday I had it out and I had completely preheated the battery for maximum performance, and I was trying to find a road that, even though the road and the tires are cold, that it was at least dry or not so soaking wet, but the roads are currently very wet. Yeah, it's pulling hard. But I tried to find a place that I could really get all the performance out of the car. Couldn't really find a good place, but I did have the battery preheated, and what I found was this thing pulls like crazy up to 50, 60 miles an hour, and then the acceleration begins to taper. And once you're up at 70 or 80, it's kind of signed off. I mean, it's still accelerating, but there's this massive punch. I mean, like bang, where it hurts your organs at a dead stop, just ugh. And then it kind of goes ugh, and the acceleration reduces as it goes up to speed. It's kind of strange in that respect. So, and I understand that the later cars, the P100D with ludicrous plus mode, is not that way. They continue pulling and pulling and pulling. But this particular car definitely does sign off above 60. Now, to a large extent, that's fine because that's where you live when you're in the car. I mean, it's rare that you're going to go over that speed. But it's just something that I want to point out that's very different between electric cars and gas cars. So, for instance, I mentioned our BMW. It's an M240i all-wheel drive convertible great car. Well, that car, 0 to 60 is 4.4 seconds, and I've tested it with my V-Box. That's an accurate time. Now, that is identical to the all-wheel drive non-performance Model 3 before the performance upgrade that you can get for it. And they are both rated at 4.4 seconds. The thing is, with the BMW, it will pull relatively hard, but what happens is it pulls relatively hard, and then it's kind of like this. It pulls hard, and then it keeps pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. So that car above 80 is still pulling every bit as hard as it was at 40. With Teslas, at least this car and every other Tesla I've driven, they're not that way. They pull crazy hard from the get-go, and then it reduces. Now, my Model 3 is a little different because it's a non-performance rear-wheel drive car. You nail it, and it starts to pull, and then the pull increases. At about 30-35 miles an hour, you've got roughly maximum performance from the car, and then at about 60 it begins to sign off again. So say 30 to 60 miles per hour, that car pulls real hard, real hard. I've got extra wide tires, 10-inch wide wheels at the rear, at wider tires, and that car at 40 miles an hour, if I match the accelerator, it'll turn the tires. The traction control has to kick in. So that car, I'd say from 40 to 60, pulls pretty much as hard, or it feels very similar anyway, to this car in that speed zone. This car, however, from 0 to 40 is painful. I mean, it's violent. So now here's another thing. For those of you that are unfamiliar with very high performance cars, with a gas car, there's all kinds of drama going on. Now, our BMW is smoother. It's not as loud. It's a 3-liter 6-cylinder. It's not a big bellowing V8, but it still has some of that drama there. When you're in a gas car, high performance car, I don't know, Corvette, Dodge Hellcat, something like that, you get on it and you feel the acceleration, but that acceleration is accompanied by much more drama. So, for instance, you pretty much all of your senses are excited by flooring a gas car. So you've got obviously your sight. You can see that the scenery is going by faster and faster as you're accelerating. You've got the sense of touch. You can feel the G-forces. You've got your sense of hearing. You can hear the engine revving very hard. You've even got the your sense of smell, which is you can smell the exhaust, or you can smell the heat from the engine. I don't think you can taste anything, but you get my point. Your senses, there's a symphony of sensory input from a high performance gas car that isn't present in a high performance electric car. Now, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. There's something to be said for a car that does it without drama, and that's what I would say is true about this car. The performance, high performance electric vehicles, and this is the fastest electric car I've ever driven, or quickest, but I've built some truly insane electric bicycles, 45, 50 horsepower electric bicycles. And so I understand high performance electric propulsion. There is something to be said about a vehicle that will accelerate with a ferocity that, I mean, this car from a dead stop feels like the finger of God is behind the seat giving you a shove. I mean, it's otherworldly. And the torque is instantaneous, it's violent, it's insane, and hence the insane mode that they gave this car. And there is a draw to that the serenity, the effortlessness at which a vehicle like this builds speed and accelerates. It's wonderful, and it's obvious that you're not doing a lot of harm to the drive system when you floor this car. With our BMW, you have to use launch control, which is to step hard on the brake, floor the accelerator for 1 full second to let the turbo spool up, and then let off on the brake and let it go. Well, that's really hard on the transmission. It's hard on the engine. It's hard on everything, really. And while it's wailing through the gears and whoa, whoa, and shifting and all that, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, and while it's doing it, you're like, wow, this thing's beating itself to death. But this car, so I'll stop right at a telephone pole here. So there's no telephone poles on the other side, but there's a telephone pole, whatever the distance is between them, up ahead of me. So floor it. Oh, wheel spin. Holy cow. Good grief. And there's 60. Holy cow. So, I mean, it's crazy how hard this car pulls, yet I can tell it's just doing it. It's just, you put the pedal down and it's violent without this sense of I'm ripping myself to death. However, accelerating a car like this hard is not necessarily good for the car. It is hard on the driveline. It's really hard on the battery. But admittedly, it's not quite as hard on a car like this as it is on a gas car. So my impression of this car, when I turn it back in, will I miss the acceleration? Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But there were people that made comments in my community page where I showed a picture of this car and it mentioned that I have it as a loaner, and they're like, oh, you're gonna spoil yourself, you're gonna get back into your rear-wheel drive car and you're gonna miss the performance. Will I? Yeah, but I gotta tell you, since filming this video, I've driven 20.2 miles and I've averaged 536 watt-hours per mile, and I've only floored it a couple times for a very brief period of time. But again, I'm at 536 watt-hours per mile. That is, that's horrible. That is way more than twice the watt-hours per mile that my Model 3 would see. And in case you're unfamiliar with what that means, that is twice the power consumption per mile. More than twice the power consumption per mile of where I would be driving the same amount of distance in my Model 3 in the same conditions. This car is horribly inefficient. Now, if for a big car, it's efficient. But for a performance, and it's for a performance car, it's very efficient. But when you consider electric vehicles are primarily looked at for their efficiency and for their low operating expense and all of that, this is a very inefficient car. Again, for its size, it's efficient, but I'm one person in this, whatever it is, 5,000-pound car, and it's a lot of car to be moving around 180-pound man. So, and in my Model 3, is it less performance? Yes, but it's less wasteful. I would probably be at about 260 watt-hours per mile right now, driving it in the same distance, but I'm at 528 watt-hours per mile, 21.5 miles. So if I owned this car, I'd probably rarely ever use the acceleration because it would drive me crazy seeing those numbers. In fact, when I take this car out just to kind of mash on the accelerator and have fun with it, I'm usually at about 1,100 watt-hours per mile. I mean, that is horrific. That's like, oh my gosh, I may as well be driving a Corvette and paying for gas at that point. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you get my point on that. And so therein lies the rub. Therein lies the issue with high-performance electric cars, is that it does indeed drastically reduce your range. It also is hard on the battery pack, and I'm going to do some future video footage on that. I'm going to do a video in the future on that very thing using the Scan My Tesla app, and I'll explain to you guys the behavior of lithium batteries and what they like or don't like, so you can watch for that in an upcoming video. So anyway, to wrap it up, do I like this car? Holy cow, yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, total ridiculousness. Oh jeez. Cow, the pull. It is nuts. I mean, the pull, I can feel my eyes, I can feel my cheeks, I can feel my organs, I can feel my lungs somewhat compressing inside my torso when I accelerate this car, even though it's wheel spinning, even though it's cold out and I'm not getting near the performance out of it that it's capable of. So yeah, this thing is crazy. It's crazy. I love this car. So that being said, though, as I mentioned before, I do actually prefer the Model 3. So anyway, that is my take on this car. If someone gave me this car, would I take it? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not a fool. But I'm one that likes smaller cars and less high-tech stuff to go wrong. So, but it has been a joy to drive this car. I'm really looking forward to trying a P100D with Ludicrous Plus mode. I'm also really excited to try out the refreshed Model S, especially if they do indeed release it with Plaid mode. And the guys at Highland Park Tesla said I'm more than welcome to try one out as soon as they have it. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate all of the feedback that you give me. I appreciate all the views. And look for a video on what's happening with the channel for 2020. I know everybody's doing this right now, but yeah, there's a lot happening. My channel has gone from being microscopic to just being very small. So it has grown, but it's gotten to the point now where I can do more with it. And so I'm really looking forward to this year and what could potentially go on. I'm working on a couple of more upgrades for my Model 3. So anyway, I'm going to do some walk-around footage of the car for this video, and then I have to head home and fill some screen mount orders. It is New Year's Day, so I've got time. And anyway, thanks, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. Have a great day now. Bye-bye.